Welcome to Deep Psyche. When he withdraws into silence, your heart tightens, your mind races with restless questions, and every moment of absence feels deafening. Yet what if that silence is not rejection, but a hidden language of love? What if his distance is not indifference, but an unconscious struggle he himself cannot name? In this video, we will uncover the paradox of why a man who truly loves might retreat, hesitate, and seemingly turn away. Guided by Carl Jung's profound insights into the human psyche, we will explore the unseen forces within him, the anima projections he carries, the ancient fear of surrendering to the very intimacy he longs for. Because real love does not only awaken joy, it stirs the shadows we thought we had tamed. If you have ever asked yourself why he stays silent, or why he distances himself just when you feel closest, stay with us. The answers lie deeper, hidden not just within him, but within you as well. Carl Jung's analytical psychology offers a profound key to understanding the contradictory behaviors we often encounter in romantic relationships. When a man who loves you pulls away or grows silent, it is rarely a sign of indifference. More often, it is an unconscious response to inner forces that lie beyond his immediate control. Jung speaks of projection, the psychological mechanism through which we cast onto others aspects of ourselves we have not yet recognized or integrated. In the throes of love, a man frequently projects his anima, the archetypal feminine image of his psyche, onto the woman. She unknowingly becomes the embodiment of all he longs for, fears, and unconsciously seeks to reconcile within himself. This confrontation with his own soul image can be overwhelming. Love, in its truest form, initiates the individuation journey, the lifelong task of becoming whole by integrating both light and shadow. When love touches something deep within him, it activates not just dreams and desires, but also old wounds, fears, and insecurities. His withdrawal, then, is not born from a lack of feeling, but from feeling too much, more than he yet knows how to bear. In this light, silence is not rejection. Distance is not disinterest. They are signs that the relationship has stirred the unconscious, demanding a transformation he may not yet feel ready to undertake. It reflects the timeless struggle, the yearning for union with the beloved, and the fear of losing one's fragile sense of self. Rather than interpreting his withdrawal as abandonment, it may be wiser to recognize it as evidence of the relationship's profound impact. The work of love, according to Jung, involves not idealizing the other, but integrating the projections, both light and shadow, to meet the other soul to soul beyond illusions. If he loves you, yet retreats, it is likely because he stands at the threshold of his greatest inner challenge, to love without annihilating himself. Love that touches the soul does more than bring bliss. It holds up a mirror to all that remains unresolved within us. As Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In the intensity of true intimacy, a man may not only see the parts of himself he cherishes, but also the parts he has denied and feared. His dreams, his hopes, and his shadows are all awakened. The shadow, in Jungian terms, contains all that has been repressed. Instincts, emotions, truths too painful or unacceptable to our conscious identity. When love stirs these hidden depths, projection becomes inevitable. He does not merely see you, he sees in you both his salvation and his undoing. It is a natural process, yet one that demands deep inner work. Without this inner work, his instinct may be to flee rather than face the dissolution of old patterns. To love truly is to risk transformation. And for many, the fear of transformation outweighs even the longing for love. Thus, his distance may be less a betrayal than a testament to how profoundly he has been moved. It is not a reflection of your worth, but of the silent, invisible battle within his own soul. A battle between the need for connection and the fear of losing the fragile structures that have so long defined him. When love stirs the shadow, a man finds himself standing at the edge of an internal abyss. Before him lies a stark choice: to confront the wounded parts of himself or to retreat into the familiar walls of the known. Most are not prepared for such a reckoning, and so they flee. In this light, his silence, his absence, his seeming indifference are not the absence of feeling, but the overwhelming presence of it. Love, by touching the soul, awakens not only tenderness, but also terror. The terror of dissolving into something larger than the self he has painstakingly constructed. For the woman who experiences this withdrawal, the pain can be devastating, especially if she too projects her own longings, ideals, and unmet needs onto him. The wound of feeling ignored cuts deep, but it can also become a portal to a deeper understanding. When she perceives that his retreat may not be rejection, but an unconscious confrontation with his own shadow, she ceases to take his behavior personally. She begins to see the vast psychological forces at play, forces that belong not to personal failure, but to the timeless dance of love and individuation. True love is never merely a union of two beings. It is a call to wholeness, an invitation for each soul to encounter itself fully, light and shadow alike. If the bond is real, it will inevitably stir old wounds, awaken ancestral patterns, and shake the defenses we have built for survival. This turbulence is not a mistake. It is necessary, for there is no true transformation without a crisis of the old self. Thus, when he loves you, yet distances himself, he may be caught in an inner battle. The fear of losing himself in your embrace, of surrendering into a connection that demands more vulnerability than he is yet ready to give. What he fears is not you, it is the awakening you have stirred within him, the call to heal, to change, and to integrate the forgotten parts of his being. This is the sacred paradox of soul-deep love. It unites and it fractures. It soothes and it exposes. And though we are rarely ready for what is revealed, through understanding we gain the one power that truly matters. The power not to control another, but to choose our own response. With awareness, with compassion, and with courage. Carl Jung teaches us that every man carries within him the anima, the inner feminine archetype, shaped by his earliest experiences with the women in his life, particularly the mother. The anima is not simply a dream of feminine perfection. She is the gateway to the man's own wholeness. When a man has not yet made the anima conscious, he unconsciously projects her onto the women he loves, surrounding them with his own illusions, fears, and longings. Thus, when he loves and then retreats, he is not fleeing from you. He is fleeing from the mirror you have become, a mirror reflecting back all the softness, the vulnerability, and the emotion he was never taught to embrace. You awaken in him not just desire, but also dread, for to truly love, he must dismantle the armor he has worn his whole life. In you, he sees both salvation and surrender, and it is not yet clear to him whether love is a promise of becoming or a threat of annihilation. The anima is not merely a romantic ideal. She is a force, intuitive, emotional, chaotic, a current of deep sensitivity and desire for fusion. When not recognized, she becomes a source of confusion and fear, destabilizing the very foundations of a man's inner world. Thus, the love he feels for you may serve as the very portal through which this forgotten dimension of his psyche is activated, and simultaneously, the trigger for an internal crisis. When he looks at you, he does not simply see you. He sees everything he has longed for, everything he has feared, everything he has never been able to name. At first, this projection is enchanting. You are placed upon a pedestal, bathed in a soft, sacred light. You become perfect, almost mythical. But as intimacy reveals your humanity, the illusion begins to crack. Disillusionment sets in, not because you have changed, but because you never were the image he projected. What he loved was an aspect of his own soul, a lost fragment seeking reintegration, not something external he could possess. And when he realizes this, the collapse begins. Emotional confusion, fear, and withdrawal. The wounded masculine is the man estranged from his own tenderness. Taught to swallow his tears, to wear strength as armor, he approaches the anima, the sacred feminine within, without the emotional tools needed to hold her. Encountering you opens a door to a vast, unfamiliar universe, and that universe roars with forgotten feelings. He feels small, overwhelmed, terrified, and so he flees. The pain of his withdrawal is often devastating for the one left behind, but his pain is just as real, though it remains silent, hidden beneath a surface of indifference. It is the ache of not knowing who he is, the paralysis of not understanding his own feelings, the despair of being unable to sustain a connection that transcends reason. He does love you, but he also fears you, not for who you are, but for what you awaken in him, the call to transform. It is vital to understand that his crisis is not your fault. You did not cause the storm within him. What you can choose is how you respond to this awareness. Instead of trying to rescue him, to fix him, or to chase him back into connection, perhaps the most powerful act of love is to give him the space to face his own journey. Meanwhile, you too are invited to reflect. What part of your own soul did you project onto him? What unmet longing were you asking him to fulfill? Love, in its deepest form, is never just the meeting of bodies. It is the mirroring of souls, a sacred and often painful invitation to wholeness. Understanding the anima and the intricate dynamics of masculine psychology allows us to view withdrawal not as rejection, but as an inevitable stage of the journey toward authenticity. It is a call for both partners to reclaim the parts of themselves they once disowned, so that, perhaps, they might one day meet again. Not as projections, but as whole, conscious beings. When a man loves and yet ignores you, his actions may seem cruel or absurd, but through Jung's lens, this paradox reveals a profound psychic struggle, the defense against a transformation he does not yet know how to embrace. True love is disruptive. It demands the crumbling of old emotional structures often built upon repression, rigidity, and fear of surrender. When a man enters a bond that demands emotional presence and vulnerability, his internal defenses react. The impulse to withdraw, to fall silent, to become cold. These are not mere signs of indifference. They are symptoms of an unconscious mind in revolt. Jung reminds us, the unconscious, if left unintegrated, will manifest through symptoms, contradictory behaviors, sudden withdrawals, inexplicable silences. He does not ignore you because he does not care. He ignores you because he has not yet learned how to feel completely. Many men raised under the banner of the heroic archetype, rational, controlled, invulnerable, were never taught the language of the heart. For them, vulnerability threatens identity itself. And so, when love demands surrender, when it beckons him to step into the unknown, he retreats behind the walls he has spent a lifetime constructing. His silence is a shield, his distance, a desperate attempt to preserve the fragments of a self he feels slipping away. Thus he loves you and he fears you, because loving you calls him to become something he has never been taught to be, whole. Emotional ignorance is deeply intertwined with the shadow. As Jung describes, the shadow is the hidden side of the personality, everything the conscious mind has rejected, judged, or refused to integrate. In moments of emotional crisis, these buried fragments surge forth, unexpected and overwhelming. Within the masculine shadow dwell fears of abandonment, deep insecurity, repressed rage, silent neediness, hidden jealousy, and fragile vulnerability. When true love awakens these buried emotions, the man stands before a mirror he does not recognize. Silence becomes a desperate attempt to avoid inner collapse. Withdrawal in this sense is not mere indifference, it is a form of unconscious self-preservation. There is also an ancient symbolism to this retreat. In many archetypal traditions, the hero must cross a desert, endure exile, or wander through isolation before he can rediscover himself. Thus, his withdrawal can be seen as an unconscious inward journey, a necessary disorientation to reorganize the inner world, to name feelings too complex to articulate. But because this process is unconscious, he cannot communicate it. He disappears, leaving only silence. And the woman, left behind, feels only the sharp sting of abandonment. Here, many relationships falter. The woman internalizes the silence, interpreting it as a reflection of her own inadequacy. Yet in truth, she has been caught in a drama that belongs more to his inner world than to her worth. Recognizing this distinction breaks the cycle of reactive pain. Instead of chasing answers, pleading for attention, or drowning in self-doubt, she can turn inward and ask, what within me has this awakened? What wound, what fear, what forgotten need? Awareness is the key. Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If the man does not understand why he withdraws, why love both calls and terrifies him, he will be doomed to repeat the same pattern again and again in every relationship. Likewise, if the woman does not see the deeper dynamic, she risks exhausting herself trying to fix what is not hers to mend. In this context, his silence is not a punishment, but an unconscious plea, a cry for time, for space, for the silence necessary for an inner world to slowly rearrange itself. It is not easy for the one who feels, who waits, who aches to be met. But reframing this silence as part of a profound psychological movement transforms pain into wisdom. Even when love does not manifest in the form one hoped for, it still serves as a powerful mirror for growth. Faced with the silence of the man who loves and yet withdraws, the woman often finds herself caught in a storm of emotions. Doubt, rejection, insecurity, anger, neediness. But hidden within this whirlwind lies a sacred invitation, a call to consciousness. Jung taught that every meaningful encounter is, at its core, an opportunity for individuation, the sacred journey of becoming whole by integrating our inner opposites. Thus, even in pain, even in absence, the silence of the other can become a portal to self-knowledge, a threshold into deeper authenticity. The awakened woman is not one who does not feel pain, but one who chooses not to lose herself within it. She understands that his withdrawal is not a verdict upon her worth, but a reflection of a broader unconscious dynamic unfolding within him. And with this understanding, she draws back the energy she once invested in the wound and reclaims her own center of gravity. She remembers that true love begins within, and that the other is but a mirror, not the source of her completion. The silence that once seemed unbearable now becomes a call to deeper inner listening. Instead of asking, "Why is he ignoring me?" she asks, "What is this absence seeking to reveal within me?" This shift in focus is profound. Rather than seeking emotional validation through another, she turns the gaze inward. She witnesses her own vulnerabilities, the patterns of attachment, the fantasies of idealized love, and the old unhealed fears of abandonment. And in this honest seeing, the process of healing begins. She no longer forces answers nor chases what flees. She recognizes that his silence speaks of an internal journey only he can walk. Respecting that journey is not passivity, it is an act of radical self-love. Paradoxically, his distance becomes the sacred space wherein she returns to herself, strengthens her identity, and rewrites the story she once told herself about love and belonging. The awakened woman also faces her own shadow. She sees how she too projected onto him, perhaps the absent father, the unreachable savior, or the partner who would finally mend her broken places. By bringing these unconscious images into the light, she liberates herself from ancient scripts and begins to choose not from lack, but from clarity. She becomes whole, no longer a half-seeking completion, but a being standing in her fullness. Transforming pain into awareness demands courage. It is easy to blame, to name the other as cold, immature, or cowardly. It is harder and infinitely more powerful to look inward and acknowledge how much of this pain is old, how much was already waiting to be healed. But in that honest confrontation, true power is born, not the power that dominates or controls, but the power that witnesses, embraces, and transforms. The awakened feminine is not passive, it is receptive, but not lost in vulnerability. It is deep, but wisely guarded. It knows when to stay and when to let go. It understands that love is not about clinging, it is about liberation. Thus, even in the face of absence, she does not wither. She expands. When a woman steps into this state of being, the relational field shifts. The man, though still tangled in his own inner conflicts, senses this transformation. Sometimes the silent strength of her presence stirs within him the desire to face himself, to grow, But whether he awakens or not is not her concern, nor her burden. True transformation happens when she ceases living in a function of his response and begins living in fidelity to her own truth. The awakened woman knows she deserves a love that does not silence her, diminish her, or leave her lost. But she also knows that the journey of another soul is not hers to control. Growth unfolds at its own pace, and love cannot be rushed into awakening. Her task is to nurture her own soul, to walk her own path, and to choose with discernment what and who is worthy of her presence. Thus, even his silence becomes a teacher, not a punishment, but a mirror, not a sentence, but an invitation, and she moves forward. Not as one fleeing pain, but as one who understands that pain is part of the journey, not its destination. Love is not merely an encounter, it is a revelation. And when he ignores you, even while loving you, he is grappling with shadows of himself he cannot yet name. You, on the other side, bear the ache of invisibility, but you also hold the sacred possibility of transmuting that pain into wisdom. Jung taught that true union arises only from integration. He must find his own wholeness, just as you must find yours. Only when love ceases to be an escape and becomes presence can it truly flourish. And presence begins when you choose, with tenderness and with courage, to return to yourself. Thank you for taking the time to listen and reflect with me. May each word be a small bridge guiding you closer to yourself. I wish you the strength to love, the gentleness to let go, and the wisdom to choose what truly nurtures your soul. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe and walk with me on this journey of awareness, healing, and inner growth.